Hello, I'm Dr. Pierre Simon, and it's wonderful being back with you as we continue in our series of Unmasking Addiction. I hope you've been enjoying it, sticking with it. There's so much to talk about. We're in relapse prevention. Relapse prevention is a big area because it involves not only that time period where someone is beginning a recovery from their addiction or whatever they want to change in life. It doesn't just have to be about substance abuse or behavioral addictions or anything like that. It can be, gee, I just want to change this in my life or that in my life. I want to be better. Well, there's a process involved, isn't there? And sometimes you need help. Sometimes you do it on your own. But irregardless, these things happen, these characteristics that hold you back, that prevent you from completing that task that you'd like to complete in whatever changes you'd like to make in your life. And in this case, in recovery, in addictions recovery, unmasking that relapse prevention problem where you may start in the recovery process. Maybe you're in a treatment program or you're out of the treatment program and you're going to your groups and so on and trying to be continuous in those changes. There are things that happen that are like anchors. They hold you back. They prevent you from going forwards. And perhaps sometimes they cause you to relapse. And that's what we've been talking about. And in this area of 10 compromising warning signs regarding relapse, we're talking today about immobilization. It's an important indicator because it you don't think about it that much. You don't realize the impact that it can have, how it's like an anchor that slows you down slowly. You don't realize that you're being held back by immobilization. Specifically, immobilization's behaviors like daydreaming, wishful thinking. You know, I remember when I was young, I did a lot of daydreaming when I was young. Wasn't such a great thing to do, but sometimes my mom would come and say, what are you thinking? You know, and I don't know what I was thinking. I was just staring, you know, we all kind of do that at times. But if you do it too much, it's not a good thing. So daydreaming, wishful thinking, is that bad? Well, let's see. We'll talk about that. Indecision, negativity, and escapism. These are all serious impediments to recovery, to making or continuing those changes that you'd like to make in your life. Daydreaming is a natural thing. We all daydream. I think you probably can look back on yesterday and think, what did you daydream about yesterday? I think when I get up in the morning, I start daydreaming, you know, thinking about, you know, what about this day, or what might I like to be doing, and so on. That's normal. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a natural thinking process that is common. It's common. But anything we do too much is not common. It's never a good thing. Daydreaming is the mind's way of stepping out from the present moment, creating a mental space for exploring alternative realities. From a mental and emotional standpoint, this can offer a break from the stressors and inspire creativity. So, yeah, you know, sometimes I'll be at work and I'm focused on something, I'm doing something, and I'll pause for a moment. Okay, take a breath, and you know, have a nice window at my office where I'm looking out at the trees, and every once in a while I get some deer that come running by, and rabbits and whatever else. But I'll sit and I'll stare for a moment. I'm daydreaming at that moment, just kind of settling my thoughts, calming myself, and then back to work. And maybe I've had a client in there and it was stressful, and they're gone, and I'm making my notes, and then okay, you know, look out that window and daydream a little bit, get a reset going, calm things down, and then start over again. normal process that we all do. Various theories, such as default mode network theory, suggest that daydreaming is a fundamental thinking function rather than a lapse. It engages a different set of brain regions that are crucial for self-referencing, thinking about yourself, about the thoughts that you might have of what you'd like to do, or what you would like to make changes of, or what just happened, and reorganizing things, putting things together, and it's just kind of drifting off, looking at the clouds. I love the clouds. I'm always looking at the clouds. Sometimes when my kids were young, Dad, why are you always talking about the clouds? That's a pretty cloud up there, isn't it? Or look at the shape of that cloud. What does that look like up there? Daydreaming is change of pace, getting out of the ordinary and helping yourself to settle, putting both feet back on the ground. So it's crucial for thinking about ourselves, for future planning, for moral reasoning, and even more. Daydreaming, although often regarded as harmless indulgence, can be a detrimental obstacle during addiction recovery. Why is that? Well, because it interferes. If I do too much daydreaming, I'm interfering from my work. If I drift off too much, I lose track of where I am. Have you ever been in the zone? When I'm writing, I'm in the zone. I start writing and I'm focusing. But if I drift off for too long, getting back into the focus of writing, now I got to reread the whole thing. I got to start at the beginning, reread it so I can get back to where I was. That can take a little while. It can also be discouraging for some who may be in recovery. They're having trouble getting back to that moment in time. It frustrates them. They get frustrated. And the next thing happens, they escape. So detrimental obstacles during addiction recovery interferes with healing. Daydreaming creates a dissociative state, a detachment from self. Individuals become detached from that reality of their real circumstances that are going on at the moment. Instead of actively engaging in their recovery journey, they find themselves immobilized in a fantasy world. Now, sometimes I think of daydreaming and I think of it as, it's like dreaming at night, isn't it? What do we do when we dream at night? We got all these little crazy thoughts or these crazy stories, what in the world was that? When you wake up, and what does that mean, and all that. Well, daydreaming is a conscious form of dreaming at night. But the researchers tell us that we have to dream at night. It's important because dreaming resets the mind. It resets the thinking. It kind of gets rid of those things that are not important, puts them in the further file box in the brain where you don't really have to access them very often, and then takes those important thoughts and resets them into the file where you can access them more readily. Makes it easier to get those memories. So it's a reset that occurs when you're dreaming at night. Also, some other things occur too from the counseling perspective when we're dreaming at night. It's like leaky plumbing. There's a drip, drip, drip of something there's a stoppage and it's dripping, it's leaking. That's our mind telling us, you got to address that. There's something wanting to come up. There's pressure occurring and you need to address it. And so when you're dreaming, the mind takes these symbols and all that may associate with whatever it is, whatever's causing the leaky plumbing, and you have to kind of put it together and determine, what does this mean, what does that mean? Then you suddenly realize, that reminds me of, and now you know to work on something in particular. As Christians, and so daydreaming it's kind of similar, it's just in a conscious form. But again, too much of it, not a good thing. As Christians, we should be mindful of the power of daydreaming and seek to replace it with truth. Replace it with inspiration, with wisdom. In the Bible, we have all that. So replacing that daydreaming with thinking towards something in particular is helpful. Not meditating. Now, meditating is more of a blank slate. As Christian counselors, we don't approve of the blank slate part because it opens the door for darker things coming in that you don't realize is coming in. So as Christians, we want to keep our mind in a direction that's constructive, helpful, building up, not turning us into puppets of some dark spiritual force that might be out there. So daydream in a constructive way, or meditate. So biblical meditating is a constructive way, thinking about the scriptures, thinking about the stories. How do they apply to what's happened today? How can I put this together with what just went on an hour ago or 5 minutes ago? And what would God say to me about it? What's the impression I might get? If I put on the mind of Christ, what would I see? What would I hear? What would he say about whatever it is? And so now I'm daydreaming, but I'm meditating biblically in a constructive way. And you know what? You suddenly feel a little more energy coming back. You suddenly feel, like there's insight coming in. You're gaining something that you didn't have before. And that's that inspiration and wisdom in the Bible. And so don't be conformed to this world, the Bible tells us, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind in Romans chapter 12. By remaining focused and present, we can overcome addiction and find renewed strength to stay on the path of recovery. Keep in mind that actual growth arises when we face reality head on instead of escaping into fantasies. If I just had a tough time, I don't want to escape into daydreaming and just drift off and not deal with whatever it is that just happened. So I'll focus, I'll apply whatever I'm thinking, whatever's going on. What should I think about this? How would God see this? What's the best way of seeing this? What have I learned from this? How can I experience this the next time in a better way, more constructive way, giving me more hope of if this should happen again, I'm going to handle it better, or I'll have more solutions, or whatever might come to mind. I come out of that better than when I went into it. So keep in mind that the actual growth arises when we face the reality head on. Don't just escape from it. Don't just run away from it. Wishful thinking is another area, and wishful thinking is close to daydreaming, but wishful thinking is the formation of beliefs based on what might be pleasing to imagine rather than evidence, rationality, or reality. It's essentially optimism unfounded on practical and actionable steps. In Christianity, one might liken it to cheap grace. You ever heard that term, cheap grace, where one assumes forgiveness and redemption without the penance or transformative actions, without the change involved that authentic spiritual growth demands. One of the most insidious characteristics of wishful thinking is its ability to create an illusion of progress. I don't know about you, but I know there are times I might be speaking with a client and ask them something, and oh yes, I did that, and yes, that happened, but it really didn't. But they believe it did. They're being genuine about it, and I can tell they're being genuine. They really believe they did this or they said that, but in fact they didn't, because their wishful thinking made them believe it to be true. Did you take out the trash? Might say it to the kids, did you take out the trash? Well, did you, yeah, I took out the trash, And their wishful thinking was, yeah, they took out the trash. Well, they threw trash away, or they did something with the trash, but they didn't quite go to the next step of taking it out. But in their mind, they took it out. They were being genuine, And then you get, if you're not careful, you get into, you conflict with them. Well, don't do that. Define it a little bit more, because the wishful thinking is stronger in young people. And so they can get off into those fantasy worlds and believe them to be true more easily than the grown-ups can, who are more grounded in the reality of whatever's going on at the time. Individuals may develop a distorted sense of security by indulging in optimistic daydreams or engaging in positive self-talk without a concrete plan of action. In biblical terms, it can be akin to hearing the word but not applying it, in a form of self-deception that Apostle James warns against in James chapter 1. The immobilization sets in when this wishful thinking replaces action, replacing action with optimism, because the individual feels a sense of relief simply by engaging in wishful thinking. They may become less inclined to take the complicated or more difficult, often uncomfortable steps needed for recovery. It's essential to balance optimism with reality, realism, followed by the action to achieve that meaningful goal. So there needs to be a balance there. If it's out of balance, too much wishful thinking, reality is not in play. When optimism exists in a vacuum devoid of actionable steps, it leads to paralysis, being unbalanced by not keeping grounded the feet of reality. It's like the parable of the talents in Matthew chapter 25, the servant who buries his talent in the ground may wish for growth, but takes no action to make it happen. The prodigal son didn't merely wish for a better life. He arose and took the steps necessary to go back to the Father to carry out that better life. Similarly, Zacchaeus in the New Testament didn't just want forgiveness. He took the practical phase, he took the steps toward forgiveness by giving back fourfold to those people that he had cheated in the past. Well, the next thing that becomes an issue is indecisiveness. When we're immobilized, when we're stuck in recovery or in the changes we'd like to make in our life, we can become indecisive, not sure. Doubts start welling up. The indecisiveness reflects being incapable or having immense changes in reaching a definitive choice. I don't know if I can do that. There's this problem, there's that problem, and now I'm talking myself out of it. I'm indecisive about doing whatever it is. It can stem from underlying issues such as anxiety, lack of self-esteem, or fear of making a mistake. So many people have that fear of making a mistake. It's not a bad thing, it's just a normal thing that occurs, but for some, it can get exaggerated and bring about indecisiveness or procrastination, putting it off indefinitely. And believe me, when you procrastinate, it doesn't get better, it tends to get worse. The best way to get out of procrastinating, or perhaps indecisiveness, but procrastinating for sure, set a time frame. Okay, I'm going to make this decision in 10 days, and in 10 days, whether I have all the information or not, I'm going to make this decision. Your mind starts counting down each day. As each day approaches, your mind is actually preparing itself to make that decision on the 10th day, making it a little easier. It's not going to take it away, but it's going to make it easier to make the decision because your mind has prepared itself to do that. In the context of addiction recovery, these are particularly damaging because they fuel a cycle of avoidance that could deter an individual from taking necessary steps to change. For instance, the fear of withdrawal symptoms or potential challenges in building a new life without addiction could instigate paralysis by analysis, we would call that paralysis by analysis. In other words, I'm thinking about it. I don't know if I can do this. Well, it's so much. I'm thinking too far ahead now. This isn't a good thing. You freeze. Well, you hunker down. Do you ever watch cops on TV? I don't have it that much anymore. I'll watch it on YouTube and all that because I like to see the different characters and their actions and the behaviors and all that. And I learn little things, little bits here and little bits there. But what do the bad guys do when they're running from the cops? They don't just keep running, they hide. They hunker down, they freeze. Because it's a natural inclination that when you're in a state of immobilization, when there's uncertainty, when there's fear, freezing is a safe thing to do. That is, you feel it's a safe thing to do. So they hide, and in hiding, they eventually get caught. The individual might endlessly weigh the pros and cons, stuck in contemplation phase, but not action. You think too much usually when that occurs. In a Christian context, indecision could also be considered a spiritual malaise. It could signify a lack of faith, not just one's abilities, but also in God's plan. Now I'm lacking faith and I'm lacking trust in God because I'm overthinking this. And I'm realizing, maybe he's not going to help me with this, or this isn't going to happen, and so on. And what do? You freeze again. James chapter 1 verses 5 to 8 talks about asking God for wisdom, but then it warns against being double-minded, which results in instability. That indecisiveness is a form of double-mindedness. In essence, indecision is that going back and forth, yes, no, no, yes, maybe, maybe not. Before you know it, you've procrastinated and you've made it worse. We want to make it better. We want to go forward, not backwards. That brings us to the next immobilizing factor, next issue in immobilization, and that's negativity. Because when this is going on back and forth, there's a natural negativity that tends to occur, a downplay of what's happening in order to give relief. That downplay takes you down into the basement of the brain, as we've spoken of before, where the fight or flight center, freeze center, the fawn center, where you're in a self-protective mode, you're feeling threatened by everything. That indecisiveness leads to negativity. Now you're seeing it dark. Your negative thinking patterns not only impede motivational factors, takes you out of the upper room of the brain, as we've spoken of, where the good thinking is located. It takes you out or impedes the good thinking, draws you down into that negativity zone, that self-protective, selfish zone, self-centered zone down there, where resentment, bitterness, anger resides. So for recovery, it creates a mental environment of failure that seems inevitable. Negative thoughts or beliefs can lead to self-fulfilling prophecy, where individuals subconsciously sabotage their efforts, believing that success is unattainable. Think about, you a friend, everybody runs across, and we all get a little negative once in a while. You might say something. I said something negative earlier, and I caught myself after I said it. Oh, I'm going to talk about that today. You might say, oh, the grass is so green today. And when you're speaking with someone, and what did they say back if they're negative? Oh, it was just terrible yesterday. Oh, I don't know how it got so green today. Or just wait till tomorrow. It's gonna get all shriveled up with the sun. What just happened? I was feeling good talking about the green grass, and suddenly somebody's saying all these things, and now, it doesn't feel so good anymore. People don't like being around negative people for very long because it brings them down. That's pushing people away, isn't it? You don't want to do that. You want them close, so you're self-sabotaging. You're sabotaging your relationships or the bonding in relationships by that negativity. So negative thoughts or beliefs can lead to self-fulfilling prophecies, because if you're going to talk about the negativity, gee, look how beautiful the sky looks today. Oh, you should have seen it yesterday. Oh, it was terrible. Or wait till the rain comes tonight. Wow, that's not a good thing, is it? It's no fun being around someone who's just constantly bringing you down. Believing that causes them to believe that's all they can see. They can't see what you just said. They can't see the blue sky. They're only seeing what they're thinking. As negativity often overlaps with issues like depression and anxiety, addressing this might require a holistic treatment approach involving medical, mental, emotional, and spiritual remedies. The Bible teaches us that our thoughts can shape our reality, as it says in Proverbs chapter 23, verse 7, "For as he thinks, so is he." If someone is thinking negative, he's going to become negative. If someone is thinking positive, he's going to be more inclined to being a positive person, therefore constructive, hopeful, going forward. The negative person, negative, cynical, dark, depressed, sad, blue, going backwards. That impedes recovery. It slows it down. We want that think, feel, do cycle to be a positive cycle, a cycle of growth, a cycle where things are done and accomplished going forward, not a cycle of negativity where you then create the next negative event because of the negativity. When negative thoughts dominate our minds, they not only lead us away from the truth, but also remove the joy and peace that come from living a life aligned with God's promises, God's will. How do I know that about God? How do I know I'm going to heaven at some point in the future? Because of his promises. All the promises have come true in the Bible. All the promises that were given, thousands of promises have come true up to our day and time. No other religion in the world can make that claim. No other religion has the proof and the evidence in writing and in archaeology and in history to back it up, other than Christianity. It's all there. I have that hope. So why be negative? Why think dark? Think more positive. And that keeps me from escaping, which is the next issue that occurs in immobilization. Escapism pertains to the inclination to find comfort and respite from distressing truths, mainly through the pursuit of, what do you pursue when you escape? Entertainment, indulgences, imagining various things. That escapism is not a good thing. We all tend to do it at times, but we got to catch ourselves quickly, come back to that reality. whether it's through consuming media obsessively, so in other words, pornography for those with sex addiction issues, or diving into work for those with workaholism, or engaging in other addictive behaviors, escapism can avoid the reality of one's condition and the effort needed for recovery. From a Christian perspective, this form of self-imprisonment counters the teachings of the Bible, which emphasizes personal growth and redemption through facing challenges and moral choices head on. Don't run from those things, face those things, forgetting what is behind, the Bible tells us, and straining toward what is ahead. I press toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. Philippians chapter 3. Press forward. Yeah, we have to look at things in the past for healing that's impeding our current state of affairs, but we're not going to live back there. We're going to heal from that, gain new insight, apply it today, and go forward, heading towards that goal, heading towards that reward that's coming. Because when you're thinking good thoughts, you're going forward, something good is going to come out of it. Prayer and faith-based community support can counter immobilization troubles during addiction recovery and provide a proactive avenue of decision making. That word proactive is important. So many people react instead of being proactive. They're not thinking ahead, anticipating, in preparing, but they're just waiting for something to happen and then they react to it. They're not going forward. It's slowing them down. It's immobilizing them. Ultimately, combining clinical expertise with spiritual guidance is a compelling approach to dealing with the nuanced problems of mental and emotional immobilization and recovery. The Bible says, don't play games with yourselves by merely listening to God's prescription. Apply it and apply it and do what it says. I had a little trouble with that word, aptly. Apply. Put it to use. Go forward with it. Apply those things that you're reading about in the Bible. Don't just read it. So God's prescription, apply it and do what it says. Anyone who simply listens to God's prescription and doesn't apply it to their life is like a person who looks at their face in a mirror, sees the dirt, then walks away without washing it off and eventually forgets about it. But those who examine themselves honestly in the light of God's law of love, the law that heals and frees from fear and selfishness, and continue to do this daily, not just once in a while, but continue to do this daily. I continue to trust in God. I continue to have hope in going forward. We want to continue in these things daily, not ignoring what is learned, but applying it diligently. Experience happiness as they are healed and transformed. Good things come from applying these things in a constructive way, a hopeful way, a way in which now I believe I can do it. When you start believing you can do something, it gets a whole lot easier. And that's what we want in staying in recovery or staying in a direction of positive changes that you'd like to make for your life. Well, next time we're going to get into confusion and overreaction. May your troubles be more minor, blessings more, and happiness come through your door. We'll see you next time. I look forward to it. Bye.